Welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I'll be making the B6385 coat. As you can see here, view B. And I'll be making this for my mom. Here's my sewing space. Before it got all messed up, I cut out the pieces, made some fit adjustments like lowering the dart and other various adjustments. And then I made a muslin. I didn't include that in this video. I'm doing some marking and cutting along those lines because I cut out the wrong size actually, so I had to kind of add a bit and I didn't want to risk anything. So that's a good technique if you, tend to tune out while you're cutting. Wow, okay, I'm behind here. So this is me cutting out the interfacing pieces. I do little pieces for the hems of the sleeves and around the shoulder blades. And this is how I marked the darts. So I used transfer, it's chalk paper, and a little wheel. Once the lining and the interfacing was all cut out, then I went to my main fabric, which is again another hand woven. You can check out my video on the B6385 coat for more on working with handmade wool or hand woven wool. I'm pinning the pieces, as you do, and cutting out. And I always try to cut on a single fold for patterned wools. It's really important to do. For the pockets, I just used an old shirt. It's great because it's a really dense fabric, so it's going to be durable. And those are all the pieces. Then I transformed the cutting table into the sewing table. What am I doing here? So I'm getting ready to apply interfacing. Oh, this is like not very fun, but really useful to do if you're working with hand woven wool because it helps everything stay together. And I just did this with using an iron and press cloth and that little oven mitt to keep my hand from going crazy. And I cut out where the darts were. Oh no, what is this water? Why is my iron suddenly leaking water and not heating up even though it's plugged in and I've done nothing? It just randomly broke and maybe it overheated or something. So then I had to get a new iron. So here's an iron unboxing. I think a lot of people like the Black & Decker one. I'm sure it will be great. So I just took it out of the box. I didn't need to leave this in, but I like to show off my new iron. It's purple. It's got the dial thingy. And with this new iron, I was able to finish applying the interfacing to all my pieces. Next up, tailor's tacks for those little circles everywhere on the pattern pieces. And then here is another step I recommend for hand woven wools is zigzagging around the edge, all the edges of all the pieces. So once I'm done, it looks something like this. In this clip, I'm hand sewing along the edges of the dart because it's a really cool technique. When you pull those threads, it will form the dart for you and you can sew along that line. It's a really accurate way of marking your darts before you sew them. And yeah, so I just sew it with a stitch, put my threads on this thread catcher that my aunt made, thank you Martha, and tie my little dart tails. Press with an iron and voila. And then in this step, I think I'm just stay stitching. Next, this is the button guide. So I have to tackle all the button holes that are going to be on this coat. And once again, I decided to do bound buttonholes. I'm using these little felt squares that I already had and they matched. And this time I'm remembering to hand wash them first because I forgot to last time. So just with some warm water and some delicate detergent. Pretty simple. And I don't really go too in-depth in how I do the bound buttonholes. I think I do in my other video a bit more. or you can just look at like tutorials online. However, it had been a while since I made that previous coat, and I forgot that I actually wouldn't do bound buttonholes, at least for the top button, the one right by the corner, right by the neckline. I wouldn't do a bound buttonhole for that one. And that hand gesture was me being annoyed because I accidentally put the buttons on the wrong side for this coat. I didn't mention it yet, but I was really in a rush sewing this coat. I had like not very long to do it before I went away, and I really wanted to get it done before Christmas time. So I made a few little stupid mistakes like that. So yeah, one of those mistakes was this top buttonhole, because the same thing had happened on the other coat I made, which is really frustrating. There's just too much bulk. You've got two seams and a lot of layers of fabric really close to each other. They're gonna not let you have room to push out the facing to make that window. It just doesn't work. And here I am cutting off the excess felt in an attempt to reduce bulk, but you don't want to cut off too much because you want it to stay, flat. Here they are from the right side, and there's the facing piece. So I put them wrong sides together. That's really important. And then I'm going to mark where these buttonholes line up. So I'm going to use pins, point them through to the other side, and use a little chalk to mark where to put the buttonhole facings. Then I take little pieces of fabric and put them down. You make these facings in the same way that you make the bound buttonholes. Just use a thin fabric that goes with your main fabric in case it peeks out a little bit, which tends to happen to me. Here I am interfacing that lining for the pocket flaps. I use lining on one side instead of 2 layers of main fabric because it just reduces the bulk. You see me here making the trapezoid shape, but I actually end up making the rectangle shape because it looked cleaner. That's another thing to keep in mind. If you're making, a coat with thick fabric, the trapezoids won't really look as neat. You see, right? Yeah. The point isn't sharp enough to really look good. And then I just applied them to the front pieces of the coat. Up next is sewing the pocket bags. I think this fabric looks really cool, these two patterns together. Making pockets is pretty simple. Just follow the directions and make sure you don't sew the pocket closed. Okay, so that's the front of the coat basically done. The last step is just a top stitch, which again I would recommend for hand wovens. Then I'm attaching the side back pieces to the center back. Adding the yoke and top stitching, which I would recommend for thick hand woven fabrics prone to fraying. Next, I do the fun part of attaching the coat front and back together at the shoulders and at the side seams. This is fun because now you have a coat that you can actually try on. Yep, next is the collar. So with the under collar piece, I'm folding in the seam allowance, tracing around that, putting it on the bias of some hair canvas and cutting out 2 of those. Then I trim off a little bit from the center back so I can lap the seams to reduce bulk. Then cut off a bit from each edge where the collar point is so that it will be a bit shorter and it will help encourage that curve. You'll see later on. I took off about that much on each side. Then I put the hair canvas onto the main fabric with some twill tape around. hand stitched the twill tape to it. Then with my silk thread, I'm going in and doing my pad stitching. I talk about this more in my other videos if you want to see some more pad stitching content. Once it's done, I put it on the top collar. You can see it's a bit shorter because we trimmed. And then I sewed it together. You can see it kind of flipped up like that. Turned it right side out, and then you're gonna attach it to your main coat. Next up, I'm onto sleeves. I recommend pre-pressing the hems on your sleeves. Definitely super helpful and saves you time. These are two-piece sleeves, so I'm putting the pieces together before I hem them. And to hem them, I'm using, this is presser foot D, and yeah, I'm using a blind hem because I don't have time. Then I did the same thing with the lining pieces. I pre-pressed them, and I constructed the lining in pretty much the same way as the main coat. So this lining color is called Rosy Beige. It's not a true brown, it's kind of mushroomy. I wish it was a bit more pink maybe, or like, I don't know. I don't love the color. I think I would go for a gold if I were to redo it. This is a caution lining, so it's flannel back satin. Definitely recommend that. I use that for all my coats. It's just the best in my opinion, especially if you live in a cold climate. Okay, and then I think at this point I've made the whole coat. Maybe I need to sew the side seams. And then I'm ready to put the sleeves in. There the sleeves are all ready. And I ease-stitched. I don't have any footage of me actually sewing the sleeves because I find it very nerve-wracking, so I don't really like to film myself while I do that. So I'll spare you that. Here they are. Here's the lining and the coat sleeves all in. Okay, I have no footage of me turning the coat right side out, but that was the two coats together. You sew around the edges and then you understitch, and voila. And that was all the thread that I accumulated. Now time for the reveal. Here it is. My beautiful mom. She's showing the inside of the coat. I think it's a beautiful fit. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, especially in the time frame that I had to work on it. So if you want to see more pictures, go to my Instagram, follow me there. And thank you for watching it. Make sure to subscribe for more sewing videos. Tell me in the comments if there's any patterns you'd like me to make, and yeah, see you next time.